everyone, and welcome to Life After the Military, a show completely focused on veterans transitioning from military to civilian life. Our show is powered by Pivotal Moments, a nonprofit on a mission to strengthen mental fitness for all. Go check them out at pivotalmoments.org to learn more. My name is Lee Elias, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend and co-host, Howie Cohen, and we are privileged to have Ed Abner with us today. Ed is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis and served as a naval officer after graduation. After his Navy career, Ed had extensive and varied experience in corporate America that included business development at multiple organizational levels, consulting services, and showed a significant entrepreneurial spirit as he started his own company, Achievance, in 2000. Ed sits on a number of corporate advisory boards as he provides critical advice to corporate leaders on how to run more successful and value-driven organizations. Ed also played a pivotal role in helping Howie transition to his corporate career at the Morgan Franklin Corporation back in 2007. I personally can't wait to hear more about that. Ed, welcome to Life After the Military.
Oh, thanks, Lee. Thanks. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
No, we're glad to have you. And I'm going to dive right into the first question, Ed, one we typically ask everybody. But you graduated from the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis in 1977. Sorry to date you. I am curious what motivated you to go to the Naval Academy, and I would love for you to share any stories you have with the audience about how that experience shaped you, and then what you did in the Navy after you graduated.
Sure. Like any 18-year-old, you don't really know exactly what you want to do. But my father was a career Marine pilot, and he's a fighter pilot, flew in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, retiring when he came home from Vietnam in '68. So I had this kind of example of somebody who had given selfless devotion to duty. And we had, his father actually lived in Mayo, Maryland, which is about maybe 30 minutes from Annapolis. And every time we'd go see him, we'd cross that Chesapeake Bay Bridge, and my dad, career Marine, would kind of point off to the left, say, see that golden dome thing over there? That's the Naval Academy. You want to go over and take a look? No, Dad. Finally, junior year, it came down to, yeah, Dad, let's go take a look. And I went to take a look, decided late in my senior year to go to Annapolis because I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with what they do, what they stand for, the kind of things you get to do in the summer that not everybody else gets to do, the reputation of the school, the leaders that have come from the school. So all of that stuff really appealed to an 18-year-old. But unfortunately, I applied late and didn't even get in until I had to go to a year of prep school, which also, again, was fantastic because it gave me that extra year to get ready for what I was about to do. And ended up absolutely loving it. Went through, played some varsity sports for them, played football until my knee decided that it was time to go do something else. Ended up playing baseball for the rest of my time there and had a great career, enjoyed it. But what really got me when I got there was the honor system. You hear a lot about honor systems and honor codes, but I always felt that if there's one word that I would love to be described as, especially if I'm no longer here on this earth, it's honorable, because it covers so many great things. And I felt that the Naval Academy really offered that in spades, as do all of the academies, as does the military in general. But that honor code, that honor system just meant a lot to me. And that selfless devotion to duty and that commitment to developing others was what really grabbed me as I was at the academy. So from the academy, I chose surface warfare. Now, you'd think I would have chosen Marine Air since my dad was 25 years, and that was my original intention. However, my right eye decided against that. And in talking to my dad, he said, last thing you want to do is be in the back seat since you can't fly. The reason for that is if the pilot's having a bad day, you're having a bad day. So I kind of took that to advice and decided maybe I'll do what the Navy actually is supposed to do, which is go to sea. So I was a surface warfare officer. I went out to San Diego to get on a destroyer, and I was all set to go to Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, which I really wanted to see. I wanted to see Seattle. And of course, as things happen in the military, that changed to Long Beach Naval Shipyard, a little bit different environment. But unfortunately, tore my knee up again and was sent to rehab. Ended up coming all the way back to the East Coast, was granted ship status again, and asked me if I wanted to go on a carrier or an LST. For those that don't know what an LST is, it's a tank landing ship, about 5,000 tons, 500 feet. So it's a pretty big ship. and it basically can ride up on the beach. And I said, what could be more fun than taking a big ship up on a beach? So decided that that's where I'd go with a smaller wardroom, got my qualifications. And then out of nowhere was invited to come back to the Naval Academy to coach baseball and teach phys ed for 2 years. And you can't get better duty than that. Sorry. So I took that, and that's where I went for my active duty. Resigned my commission out of Annapolis, and then spent the next 14 years in the reserves in various places. Finally retiring as a commander.
Hey Ed, as many times, it's funny, as many times as we've spoken, and I know that you coached baseball and softball. I for some reason we never talked about you actually playing baseball. So what position did you play?
I was a center fielder.
Really?
I was a little littler then, a little more live. Yeah, I played center field under an unbelievable coach. He had been there for 36 years, or was there for 36 years. Knew everything about the Naval Academy. The guy was pretty amazing. He had actually played basketball with Jerry West at West Virginia.
No kidding.
So yeah, and so I got a ton of stories from him. But he was an amazing coach.
Oh, that's awesome. And I honestly didn't know that you actually coached baseball at the Naval Academy. That must have been incredible.
It's going to make this a fun episode as we move down. I can tell you that right now.
Well, we ended up, when I played, the highest we were ranked was 30th in the country in Baseball America.
Holy cow.
When I coached, we got to 25th in America.
No
So
kidding.
yeah, there was a time when we were pretty competitive with all the big boys, but baseball has just blossomed. NCAA baseball is just off the charts now. So it's a different game. But when I played, we had a blast. We'd go all over the place and play whoever we could.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. So listen, Ed, as I look at your corporate career path, I see a tremendous amount of business development experience. And one of the things I look to do, and I just want the audience to know, the reason I bring several, certain guests on is because I'm trying to anticipate what some of you in uniform may want to do when you transition out and go into somewhere, whatever life after the military holds for you. But I assume some of you are going to want to go into, or may choose to go into, government contracting, right? And
Right.
federal government contracting. And I also know there's a tremendous amount of concern on the part of those of us who are in uniform with doing business development. I said it myself. I hear it all the time from people that I mentor through the process, that there is no way in the world that I'm going to do business development. I just want to do operations. I want to lead teams, and what you'll learn real fast. I don't care whether you're in a small company or in a large company. Everybody does business development. I mean, everybody is responsible for business development. So what I would love for you to do is talk about your experiences, because I know you work business development at multiple levels in different organizations, and maybe you just share, how you approached that, what you learned, how you were able to reconcile, because I'm sure you even had some concerns initially with business development, and how you reconciled that and excelled at it.
Oh, of course, you have reservations, and especially coming from the military into this new world, you're going to have reservations about a lot of things, and BD is a big one. But let me tell you how I kind of morphed into it. First of all, I was always told front line's where you want to be, right? And let's face it, business development is the front line for the company. You represent the company 24/7. And I will tell you that business development is an honorable profession. I use that word again, but it's an honorable profession if you do it with honor, which means you're not there to sell what you have. You're there to provide a solution to somebody who's looking for something, right?
Exactly.
And I always felt that I wanted to be on the front line. And there's another aspect of it. You cannot learn the business as quick in any other field. If you go into business development, when you first go into an organization, you are going to learn more about the industry, the business, your company, than any other place you could go, including operations. I will tell you that I actually started first in operations in government contracting as a program manager. We were building electronic subassemblies for the vertical launch system, for the Navy ships. And it was a great job. I had parts, I had people, it was a great job for somebody coming out of the military. But what I kept getting told was, you're doing a great job as a manager, don't get me wrong, but your business is growing at 25% a year.
Wow.
It's kind of uncalled
That's
for. And
exceptional.
they said, why? And they said, how's that happening? And I said, well, I gather intelligence. I listen collaboratively, right? They listen to me, I listen to them. I spend time with my client, my customer, trying to figure out what's bugging them. And then I bring it back to my technical expertise, who throw these things on whiteboards, and they're excited as heck because they get to try to look at something new. And then I go back and I say, I think we can do something like this. And the next thing I know, they're going, okay, we're going to add it to your contract. Well, it's not that easy anymore. I get it. There's a lot more restrictions than I think there were back in the 80s and 90s when I was kind of building this. But what it really proved to me was, what did you learn in making any decisions? You gather intelligence, you collaborate with people that you trust, and that will give you the answers that you're looking for, not answers that you hope to just get. You got to get real answers, and then you apply those answers, and you get feedback on where you are. And I said, that's pretty much what the military showed me, right? Is that those are the way you have to make decisions. Sometimes you have to make them quicker than you might like. But I always felt that business development gave me all of those options. It allowed me some independence. I wasn't stuck to a desk or chained to a desk. I had some independence. And I was able to go out and literally work with a client who could speak the language like I did. But I do want to throw some caveats out there. Where I was most unsuccessful were in two particular areas. One, if the group you're talking to is only concerned about your network, run away. Okay, and I say that not
You're talking about potential
they want to
employer.
use your
Right.
potential employer just wants to talk about who do you know, how can you get in to see them. I would run away. The first question I would ask is, I understand that you believe I have a network, and I do have a network, and I would like to use that network for referrals, but not for business. I would like them to be my experience factor, not my business team. So I don't want to talk to them about buying something. I want to talk to them about what's hot in the industry and what should I be talking about to others. So tell me that you're going to use me for an adjacent market, right? Where it's not my friends and not my former associates that I'm talking to. If you don't get the answer you want from that, my recommendation is think really hard about taking that job. Because if all they're looking for is your network, they're likely, you can't really predict what anybody's going to do, but they're likely going to push and push and push until you get to the point where you feel you're pushing too hard on your friends. And that is a recipe for disaster. It's not good for you. It's not good for your relationships. So one, go to adjacent markets, not your network. And two, you have to sell something you believe in.
Right.
Okay? When I was really into the BD side of things, the biggest one was with EDS. And I was selling the unbelievable talent and capabilities that this company brought to any military or defense, in this case, organization, and including the civil defense. But to me, it was easy to do because there was very few things that I had to say no to. Yet I could back it up with a real story. It wasn't like, of course we can do that, and then go back and say, can we do that? That wasn't the selling that you did for an EDS. The selling you did for an EDS was, of course we can do that. As a matter of fact, we're doing it here, here, and here. So I would tell people that BD, it's not for everybody, but it is frontline. Number one, it's frontline. If you want to be frontline, you want to be recognized, you want to get paid for your results, not paid just a salary. BD is a great way to go. You want to learn the most about the organization that you can, don't hesitate. So, but the issues are, you have to be careful in that you don't want to get pigeonholed into only selling to your friends. Not a successful formula. And you don't want to ever sell something that you can't absolutely wrap your arms around and believe in. So I do give those warnings, especially for somebody coming from the military. They're going to want you to sell. All right. You can speak the language, you can show the examples, you can walk the walk. And the problem is going to be, who do they want you to walk the walk with? And do you believe in what they're offering? I'm sorry,
And,
go ahead.
No, I cut you up by accident. You're bringing up a great story that I can share. And it's funny. This show is titled Life After the Military. And this is about my life in the military as a spouse. So my wife served in the Air Force. For those of you that listen to the show, you know that. And when I ended up in, most of my life has been about ice hockey. I've worked in ice hockey. And when I ended up at Eglin Air Force Base on the Panhandle of Florida, there is no hockey or very little hockey, I should say. All right, it's not exactly a hotbed down in the Florida Gulf Coast on the Panhandle. So I ended up working for an organization, and I'll keep their name out of it. I ended up writing a book about this, okay, because what I was doing at the time within sales, and this is where I want to go for the audience listening, because sales is a 4-letter word, but it's often looked at as a 4-letter word. And it's really about, as you said, honorability and how you do it, right? And I learned a lot there because I had never done sales before. And I got into this job, and the job was basically helping small to medium-sized businesses kind of get online for the first time and get their business out there. And just like you, I learned as much as I could, and I would go to my clients and I would really educate them. I'd really get to know them. They'd get to know me. And by the end of the conversation, I wasn't even pitching them most of the time. They said, yeah, let's do something. Right.
Right.
So a year goes by. Right. And as you said, I became the top digital salesperson in the company. And, I was very proud of that. And the corporate came down and they said, okay, how are you doing this? Right. How did you do this? We've never seen growth like this. I said, well, I was being honest. I was educating, and I was making them feel included. And then I did it. And they go, okay, yeah. How did you really do it? And I said, well, I was being honest and I educated. They could not believe that that was the truth. Right. Because what happened is, I mean, this company was run by a lot of, I'll just say old school yellow page salesmen, right? That back in the day, they would do whatever it took to get the sale. And here I come in and I'm doing it totally different. They really couldn't grapple their mind around it. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that I continue to work with this company. They made me a training manager. I trained people to do it the way I did, but eventually the product got very poor. And I had a real hard time at that point because of what you said. I didn't believe in the product anymore. Now, one of the weird gifts the military gave me at that point was, hey, you're going someplace else. I was like, okay, see you later. That's it for me, right? But I learned a ton there about, as you said, being honorable with your clients. And I think the best advice I got from one of the sales managers, believe it or not, who was an old school guy, but he said something to me. I think I morphed a little bit. But this is when he really changed my view of sales. All right. Because again, I think a lot of people, potentially in the military too, come out and they look at sales as like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's not a good thing. This is what he said. He said, look, everyone is selling something. Everyone. Okay. That's America. Right. He goes, but it's how you do it. He goes, if you're just selling to make the money and do that, then you're a car salesman. He goes, if you believe in what you're doing and you're making good relationships with the people, as you said, you're providing a solution. But we're all selling something. All right. And when he said that, I took that back of, wow, A, I think I can do this on my own. I don't think I need to work for an organization to do it. That's why I became an entrepreneur. And B, and Howie's been super involved in this within my life. But it's how we provide whatever it is that we're providing that is what we focus on. And I want to tell the audience this, whether you're a business owner or someone out of the military or even just someone listening to this show. All right. And I have the numbers to back this up. Okay. I have always done better as a business, whether we're talking financially, mentally, physically, whatever, always done 10 times better with the honest approach, the education approach, and the getting to know my clients. I have never succeeded. Not that I've ever done this. I've never had anybody succeed when it's just about sell, sell, sell. It just does not breed results. Now, I don't know when corporate culture is going to get fully on board with that. I think a lot of companies are starting to now as we move a little bit more towards empathy. And, these are big buzzwords now and really caring about your customer. But your story is reminding me of that because I don't want people transitioning out to look at a sales position as it's bad. I actually think people in the military can thrive in that position just because of the code of honor that you spoke about, right? Like you'll have to be authentic and honest. So in addition to all the great advice you just said, I just wanted to throw that story out there because again, my wife was in the military when I did that, but I learned that lesson. Anyway, I didn't mean to go on a soapbox there.
No,
I just, that was my life for a while. And that experience really changed my life. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, you brought up a couple points too that I'll add to. One of the things that I always felt I was selling, quote unquote, was trust, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly. That's
Right.
exactly
You have to trust that what I'm saying here, I can do, right? And that's my integrity. Integrity to me has always been measured by the gap between what you say and what you do, right? So if I do what I say, my integrity should be pretty high. But if I can't deliver, when I start not being able to deliver, like what you were saying, you start not
Right.
to believe in it, my integrity is going to start dropping. I can't, and I'm not going to let that happen.
Right.
So I do warn them, be careful about the network thing.
Absolutely.
How he
Absolutely.
knows this from a, actual experience. Be careful about that network thing. But now, if you believe in it, and I've got guys that are, guys that I graduated with that are still selling weapon systems because they absolutely believe in them,
Right.
and they are saving lives, and they won't stop. That's what they do. So,
Right.
I totally concur with that.
Well, and I would
Yes.
just add on, Howie, before you ask your next question, just one more snippet for everybody listening. It's never what you do, it's who you do it with as well. Right. And I always ask this question of somebody that, like, someone will come to me and say, I hate my job. And I say, okay, what would you rather do? Your job or be a garbage man with your best friend? Right. And they go, I'd be a garbage man. And I said, that tells you everything you need to know. Okay. Not that there's anything wrong with being a garbage person, by the way. It's a job. But my point is probably not the most glorious thing to do. All right. But yeah, if you told me I had to ride around in a truck with my best friend for 8 hours,
Yeah.
hate my job, I'm probably going to go out the truck and pick up people's garbage. You know what I mean? So I always use that as an anchor.
Yeah. We use something that was very important at Intellidyne, where was my last role as the COO there. We talked about it's not necessarily how you do what you do; it's why you do what you do.
Right. Right.
And when we would sit in front of a client or customer and start talking about why we think it's so important to be doing the things we're doing, that's when the conversations would change.
Right.
It was no longer about buying and selling; it was about critical mission support.
Totally.
And
Right.
and that became something that we used as kind of our mantra. It's not about how or when or what or how much. It's why. Why do
Right.
we do what we do? And why do you do what you do? So
And teams that are floundering tend not to focus on that enough.
we don't focus
In
on
fact, in the same sales organization I was just talking about, the whole team was thriving when we were really bonded in together. And when things started to come unraveled because corporate was managing horrendously, the whole team fell apart. The whole thing came apart. And especially for the business leaders out there, if you're feeling like you're in a position of, man, things are really falling apart, you're probably focused on the bottom line. All right. And I'm not going to tell you that that's wrong. All right. Money is very important in business. But
Sure.
Howie and I hear this all the time. We don't have the time. We got to make the money. And if your corporate culture sucks, you're going to be out of business. That's what's going to happen. You know what I mean? The money doesn't matter at that point. You got to invest the time, the money, and see the value in that. And I hope that opens up the eyes to some people. If you're in trouble, that's what you need, most likely. Howie, go ahead, or I'm going to keep talking.
And Ed mentioned Intellidyne. So a future guest we actually have on our podcast schedule was a colleague and partner of Ed's, Tony Crescenzo, a Marine non-commissioned officer who, they were just an absolute incredible 1-2 punch. And I know I think you're still advising, right, for
Yes.
for Tony in his current CEO role. But yeah, we'll get to hear more from the other side, of that dynamic duo when I think we have Tony scheduled for a podcast sometime in July. But anyway, Ed, getting back to your.
That will be completely entertaining, as you well know.
Oh, I know. Well, listen, he told me a bunch of stories yesterday. I said, hey, listen, man, you may have to tone the language down a little bit, but you got to tell this story, So he in fact, he told me about 10 stories. So but every one of them is meaningful and has a point. So Ed, listen, as I go back to your corporate career, in October of 1999, you took a position with withFedSources as a vice president. You provided consulting services. And again, I'm trying to focus on our listening audience that may be looking to go into the government contracting space. So it would be really helpful to explain, what does a company, and there are other companies that do this as well, but companies like withFedSources, what are the kind of things they offer, and what did you specifically do? Because I think anybody who goes into government contracting, at least federal government contracting, you're going to want to understand the capabilities of companies like withFedSource.
Right. Yeah. I mean, government contracting, there's some complication there, right? It's not a very simple oh, I have something to offer. They want to pay for it. It's done. There's so many different things that have to happen. So there's a number of service organizations out there that sole purpose is to help. And it could be in proposal writing or management. It could be in capture planning. It could be in strategic management. Could be service transition. Could be organizational development. There's so many different ones. Well, FedSources was originally set up to basically provide you with contract information, potential contract information. It brought the insight from contracting officers. It brought research and development into this is something that's going to happen over the next little while. You need to be concentrating on moving this forward. But they were doing all of this wonderful stuff with information, right? So they're bringing information to you about what's next. What should you be thinking about? Whether it was innovative practices or whether it was some of the government regulations that might be changing. But it was a tremendous amount of information that they were bringing to the table. So you could pick and choose as a company which information you wanted to use. They asked me to come in, Marianne Hirsch and Dusty Wentz especially, they were there. And they started their own company later, which did phenomenal. But they asked me to come in and just really concentrate on consulting services. And although that covers a lot of ground, the consulting services they were really talking about was growth, right? Operational growth. How does a company that has X amount of contracts double the contract value in 5 years? How do they do that, right? And so I had that experience from a BD and an operational standpoint, and it made sense to kind of come in and help them get this started. Now, as one of the things that I always hear from a veteran is it true that they can fire you or a company can get bought and you can move on to another company? Is it true? Is it true? Is it true? And the answer, of course, is yes, it can happen. But as long as you take care of yourself, it's not going to be an issue at all, right? So I believe that the right way for us to communicate it is opportunities abound, right? You can go in many different directions. This consulting aspect was something I always felt strongly about. You've mentioned coaching, you've mentioned training, you've mentioned teaching, all things that I've loved to do over my career. And so they asked me to take this on, and I started talking to some major corporations about how's this going? Because with FedSource's name, you're going to get in, right? I mean, they're going to say, sure, you come on in, tell me what you think. And so I was able to work with the Lockheeds back then, and the Titans, and some of the more dynamic and larger organizations to kind of help them get a feel for how do you grow your contracts. And so that's what I spent most of my time in. It wasn't really in the proposal management, although that was something they could offer as well, or even in the research and information standpoint, we had that. This was something a little bit different. And it kind of morphed into the entrepreneurial side of me coming back out, right? So that enabled me to take that knowledge base and move it forward. There's one aspect that I would really like to kind of tell everybody. Most people ask me on panels when I was at FedSources and then even afterwards, what's the major difference between selling to a commercial organization or selling or growing a contract with a federal organization? And I said, well, there's a number of differences, and there really are. It's who you're working with. It goes back to what Lee was talking about: who you're working with, what they want out of something. But I said there's really three major differences. The first one is a commercial organization is spending their money. Government is spending our money. So they have these FARs and DFARs, all of which are about 6 inches thick, that they have to, keep in compliance with.
Hey, just so the audience understands, when we say FAR, we're talking about the Federal Acquisition Regulations, right? And these are the rules and regulations that govern how you do contracting. Yeah, they're a blast to read through, man.
Yes, absolutely. Section 110.3.7. Right? But anyway, they're not using their money to pay for this. So if they use their money, if it doesn't work out, they move on. No, they have to be held accountable. And although you read about the $2,000 hammers and all that stuff, if you read what was supposed to happen for that $2,000 hammer, you can see why it cost $2,000, right? So, but these regulations are there for a reason. It's because they're spending our money, the money that we entrust to them. So that's one major difference. The second major difference is those contracting and purchasing officers in the government, they actually have clout. They have a say.
Oh yeah.
And when you talk to a purchasing agent at a
Sometimes
commercial
too
organization,
much.
yeah, sometimes too much. You talk to a commercial, purchasing agent, they're usually just a step in the process, right? Um, and that makes a major difference, because now you have to consider all these different aspects of who I have to get buy-in from, because that leads to the third element, and that's one no means no in the government. I know you find that maybe hard to believe in some cases, but that GS11 technical guru can shoot down the best idea you could ever come up with simply by saying our network can't support it. Done. That's it. It's over. The captain, the CEO, is not going to sit there and go, oh, well, no, I think we should work on this. Okay, next. Who's next? Bring it on. Because one no really means no. And as a matter of fact, that executive agent for the government, whether it's an SES or a high-level officer, they don't even get brought that solution until it's something that can be done, right? So it's totally different. In the commercial organization, the CEO says, this is what we're going to do. Guess what? That's what you're going to do. CEO doesn't have that strength in purchasing because of all those other three elements. So I like to bring that up because it's just something that separates, the commercial from a federal sale. But it's also why I really liked it, in that I had to do my intelligence gathering. I had to get my collaborative thinking. I had to get in front of all the right people to get that buy-in. But man, once I got that buy-in, it happened, right? It happened. And you got paid on time. That's another advantage of working in the government. Yeah, they pretty much have to pay you on time, or pay interest if they don't. So, but those are some of the things that I think really helped at FedSources. We were able to set that up and really lay that out in front of people and have them understand this is what we have to do in building a culture that's it's more conducive to growth.
It's interesting, Ed, because as you're even describing that, that's exactly how Morgan Franklin, the Morgan Franklin Corporation, which is where I worked when I transitioned, and I worked there for 6 years. That's exactly how they were set up, right? You had one business unit that was totally focused on commercial support. And so they could literally go in, meet with a client over lunch, and do some form of a contract on the back of a freaking napkin.
Yep.
Right? And then there's us in the government facing business unit that we had to invest, days, weeks, months, and untold numbers of dollars responding to requests for proposals.
Yep.
And then everything is competitively bid, right? So yeah, I mean, so the neat thing was, one side of the Morgan Franklin Corporation business could drive new business very quickly and probably drive increased profit margins because you could charge higher rates for commercial.
Yeah.
But those consultant agreements might be 3 months or 6 months,
Right.
or maybe at most a year. And the federal contracting, we would be like a base in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, but the rates were much lower. So it was kind of a nice balance, a nice mix. And that's exactly how they set the company up. So, so listen, what I'd like to do now, Ed, is kind of transition to how you helped me. Right. And for those who have listened to at least the podcast where Lee interviewed me, I think I told that story where, as I came out of the military, and look, I had achieved a reasonable level of success, having commanded, at multiple levels as a platoon leader, a company commander, a battalion commander, even a brigade level commander, and in different staff positions, and worked in some pretty challenging environments. When I got out and took my uniform off and put a business suit on and started working for a for-profit business in the government contracting world, I mean, it brought me to my freaking knees. And I had a real challenge with accepting the fact that I felt like I was not bringing any value to this company at all. And that was a very, very hard pill for me personally to swallow, because I was very used to going into an organization, whether I'd served there before or not, and in a reasonably quick amount of time, figuring out what I could do to add value. And in most cases, delivering some form of value. But here I was. I think by the time you got to me, I'd been there maybe 6 months, 8 months, 10, I'm not sure, but I mean, I felt like I was taking money and not earning a single penny of it. And so anyway, what I would love for you to do is talk about um, how how you help me focus. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday. How you help me focus and leverage the skills that I had developed in the military, and apply it to a business for profit type environment. Because without that kind of coaching and azimuth setting, I would have been struggling a lot longer. And you really shortcut that frustration for me.
Well, sure. I mean, the first part is the recognition. When I first talked to you, what I do remember is you made almost that exact statement. I don't feel like I'm bringing any value to this organization, and that bothers you. And I knew that as soon as you said that I had somebody I could work with. Okay, versus somebody who just says, well, I just show up and I do what I have to do and I go home. Right. You didn't take it that way. You had provided value to the organization, and you're obviously very humble about some of the success you had, in some of the places where you were in the service. But what we had to do is we had to get you kind of re-engaged with what I call purpose, right? Clarity, right? And that's clarity of purpose, clarity of communication. It's setting the proper objectives so you have something to measure, right? And fourth, it's getting leadership to pay attention, right? The good news with Bob and Rob and Ron was they paid attention. They recognized that I've got this highly talented, highly successful individual, and a few of them, by the way, not just him, who are really having trouble picking this up. And I'm not getting it done. So I need somebody that can talk the language better with them. And so they recognized and you and I have had this conversation, leadership is really about paying attention, right? So by them doing that, it enabled us to be able to sit down with you and say, okay, what are the issues here that are bugging you? And it came out loud and clear. I don't know what my purpose is. Is my purpose just to make money? Because if it is, I don't know if that's why I should be here. No, your purpose is to provide critical mission support to organizations that have critical missions, right? So how do we break that down? And we broke it down in a simple manner. And you were able to just kind of you could start to wrap your head around it, because you said, okay, mission support, that's what I'm here to do. Well, I did that for years. How do I do that now? And how do you make money at it? And we had to basically say, quit worrying about making money, right? And no, it's a real thing when guys come out of the military. Right. It's like, geez, if I don't make money, they're going to fire me. Right? No, it's not true. I said, making money is a byproduct of doing things the right way. Okay. And so we had to move in that direction. And we talked about personnel, right? So do we have the right teams in place? Do we have the right people? Are we communicating properly with them? Is the flow down working? Is the flow up working? So we hit communication, and that led to clarity. Once we got the clarity of purpose, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? Then we could put some measurable objectives together. And you and I kind of laughing about it yesterday. You found your mosaic that we built. Yeah. Mosaic is simply a tool that lists the 5 or 6 items that are of such importance for you to be able to measure whether you're making progress. And the mosaic actually stands for mastery, outstanding, satisfactory, acceptable, intolerable, and counterproductive. So if let's say your objective was, I need to get Rob Franklin in front of 6 of my best clients, right? Rob was one of the executives. And if that was it, and you only did 2 that month, you could look at it and go, I didn't spend enough time on this particular objective. How do I get my mission support back up to that level? What do I have to do? We didn't punish you for not making it, right? We just said, okay, if you thought that was important, what do we have to do to reprioritize your efforts and activities to get there? And it provided that clarity of purpose. Now you knew what you were supposed to do, at least a little bit more. But we did have to stop you thinking about, I'm not making any profit for the company, because that's not really your job. Your job is to do things right. The profit will come. Right. And once you started to see that, your team loved you because they saw that you cared, right? It's that old adage, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. They saw you cared. they saw that you really wanted to succeed. You weren't just in there to pick up a paycheck. And third, that you were willing to learn. How many colonels are really willing to learn? Right? That's a hard thing. They're the guys everybody used to go to, right? And now you're saying, but I don't know this particular world. So it took all of those things kind of coming into play. And we use tools like, strength based leadership. And we use tools like, not Myers-Briggs necessarily, but the leadership philosophy, right? Build your leadership philosophy so everybody on your team understands where you're coming from. We talked about spending time in connecting, right? Not just talking, but connecting with your teams. And once you saw the team was just gelling around where you all were trying to go. And that, if you look at what the military brings to any organization, one, it's grit, right? Two, it's being comfortable with being uncomfortable. They know how to do that, right? And three, I can name a whole bunch more, but the third one that comes right into mind is the ability to get back up when they're knocked down, right? And they get back up with the resolve not to get knocked down again, right? And when you do that, there's a whole lot you can work with. So I would say that you give me a lot of credit for it, but the credit has to go to you because you recognized it, and two, you said, "All right, I'm willing to listen. You're paying attention to me. I'm paying attention to you. I'm willing to listen. Let's try some things." And those things, they weren't huge in any way, shape, or form, but all of those things added up to you getting clarity of purpose, clarity of communication, and the ability to determine whether you were making a difference. And when you put those measurable objectives together, that helped you get that feeling of, okay, I'm providing some value here, or I didn't do what I said I was going to do. I got to get on that for the next month. And so I think all of those things combined kind of helped you really get over that hump.
Yeah,
Now you're doing it for everybody else.
yeah. So I'm having like significant flashbacks right now, right? So I mean, I remember I knew Ed was coming to sit down with me for an hour, and I was absolutely determined to show him that I am making progress, man.
Right.
So because I look like a lot of people, I was very goal driven, very results oriented, and I was not going to have a session with Ed Abner and not prove that I sat on my ass for a week, So
I was talking to Mr. Blake the other day, and old associate of ours, and he was telling me that the one thing he remembered from our talks, with he and I were talking, was, I told him that he has to tell people that are in his team, on his team, what isn't going to work for them, right? I mean, you don't want to do this. These are things, and he goes, well, I can't tell my team that. I can't. No, you have to tell them that if they're not providing value to you and making your job easier, then they're not doing their job, right? And so when he started to have that conversation with people, he said it went over like gangbusters in a good way. He said, listen, your job is to make my job easier because I got these things to do. You got these things to do.
Right.
I don't need to worry about these things if you're doing them right. And that really came into play. And that was, by the way, a compliment that you got from your leadership at Morgan Franklin. They no longer had to even think about it. It was done. And, and so if you've got the job, you've got it. That's kind of why you're here now, right?
Yeah.
Because they know you're capable of getting the job done. So,
I see this all the time, and especially when I was working with McChrystal Group in a leadership and management consulting role. And I've talked about this a little bit in past episodes, but there is such a void of leadership in corporate America. It is absolutely stunning to me, the leadership void that exists there. But one of the most significant things I see, and Lee and I are actually working with a client right now, or at least a future client, potential client, and I won't mention any names, but one of the things I see constantly is a lack of ability by a leader or a senior leader to clearly communicate standards and expectations, right? And if you don't do that, and you see that people in your organization are not doing what you want them to do, it's probably one of three reasons, right? Number one, someone hasn't sat down with that person and clearly communicated, here's what your role and responsibilities are, and here's what the standards are, and here's what I expect you to do, and
Mhm.
clearly communicate that. Or two, you as a leader probably haven't provided them the resources they need to be successful. Or three, they don't have the proper training, right? So if it's clearly communicating standards and expectations, providing resources, or providing training, those are all leadership
Yep.
responsibilities. So if someone in the organization is failing or not doing what you expect, you want them to do, you may actually be failing as a leader,
Yep.
right? And that's something that I think is just not understood. And in corporate America, we people tend to say, this person isn't cutting it, you're out of here, next. And with a little bit of investment of time and effort, you can probably coach that person like you did with me to be successful if they just have the right, if they are just able to focus on the right things, and provided the proper training and
Right.
resources to do their job, right? So yeah, I think that's listen. And the other thing I would hope, if we have listeners in our audience who are actually senior leadership in organizations or senior leadership in companies or corporations, whatever, I hope the message is coming across loud and clear to you that if you bring, veterans into your organization, they have the tremendous potential and skill set to add tremendous value to your organization. But you may have to invest a little bit of time, effort, and maybe even some money in properly preparing them and helping them transition into your organization,
Right.
and teaching them the skill sets they need so they can leverage what they already have, but just apply it in a business setting. Because really, that's what you did for me, right? You kind of took whatever strengths I may have had, and you helped me focus it into a way that now could bring value in a business setting, right? And so I'm hoping that leaders in organizations and corporations and companies, whatever it is out there that you're a part of, that you're listening to this, and you're willing to invest in the men and women who were in uniform that could be bringing tremendous value to your
Absolutely.
organization.
Absolutely.
You
You know,
know,
Lee, I just want to
go ahead, Ed. No worries.
reemphasize that. Are you paying attention? Right. Every person you and I talked about this the other day. Every exit interview was read by the CEO and COO of our company. Every exit interview, and in every case, we could bring that manager in and say, if there was some negative, if it was just, hey, I got, I couldn't relocate, or I had to relocate, or whatever, get it. But I'm talking about the ones where there's something that we might have been able to do. We would ask the question, the hard question: are you paying attention? Right? And by saying that, are you paying attention? You usually got this blank stare, right? Because maybe they missed something. And that became an extremely important element of what we were trying to provide for our leaders. So,
I took several notes here of things I wanted to go over real quick before I get to the
yeah.
next question. One is for our audience, especially the men and women transitioning from the military to civilian life. Ed, you gave some pretty amazing takeaways there. Overarching all of them was that Howie was enabled to ask for help or find help. And I think that I want to make sure I reiterate that
Mm.
if you are out there and feeling lost or feeling like you don't know what to be doing, find a resource and ask for help. Now, again, Howie, you were heavily enabled to do that, which is amazing. Like I said, that's the right way of that being handled. We're doing this podcast as a potential way for people to search and find for help without the help of an organization. But this isn't just limited to really military, right? This is anybody. Odds are, no matter what you're doing or who you are or where you're at, someone has been through it. All right. It's very rare that you're going to find a situation you're the only human being alive that has ever had to go through something XYZ. All right. If you are, you're going to make a lot of money. All right. But the truth is, sometimes it's ego, sometimes it's being an introvert, but people shy away from asking for help. And the thing is, and Howie is a champion of this. He's inspired me to do it. If I don't know, I'm going to go find someone who knows and talk to them. Right. And I think that, like, again, we all talk about that on this show. All right. But I don't think we emphasize it enough, of just that first step is typically the hardest thing to do. Sometimes it's swallowing pride. Sometimes it's just getting on the phone, but that first step is what opens up the world. And it opened up Howie's world, as he's told me many times. You know, the other notes I have here, it's funny because you talked about corporate culture and Howie, the lack of leadership. You know, I always looked at European soccer, football as they call it over there. Man, they will sack a manager there after 3 losses. They don't even give the guy a chance to build any culture.
Right.
You know, there was a team there, for those of you who follow the Premier League, called Leicester. Leicester City won the championship a few years back, I think 2015. Out of nowhere, nobody expected them to win anything. I think they were expected to be relegated. They won the whole Premier League. And, you know, when they asked them how, it's a funny story again from what I said earlier. They said, well, we bonded as a team. We worked together. We had a championship culture. And people go, no, really, how? How did you win? And it's just like, man, they just gave you the answer. And then funny enough, the next year they didn't have a great start. They sacked the coach, fired the coach. So it shows you that there's a lack of understanding of what great leadership really is. And, you know, what I was going to say is, you know, and we echo this every episode, especially first time listening or long time listening. If you served in the military, you have an aspect of that leadership that the civilian world does not have. All right. Even if you don't consider yourself to have it, you have it.
Right.
Just because you had to follow orders. You know what I mean? And again, remember, I'm the one on the show. I've observed the military. All right. My wife served, but I observed, and I learned an incredible amount just by watching the military. And I've always respected the military my whole life. It was instilled in me by my father. But my point to you is that you know, people in the military don't watch themselves like I had the chance to watch them. And again, I am a business owner. I am a civilian, and man, I would love multiple military people on my staff, which I have, by the way, because they understand. They understand the order of operations. They understand how to communicate most of the time. And as you said, Ed, if they get knocked down, they get back up. If they find a problem, they want to find the solution, and they don't want to make the same mistake twice. Right? Like, it's invaluable. And again, this goes both ways. If you are transitioning out, whether you think you do or not, I am telling you, you have that skill set that is insanely valuable to the civilian world. Right? And you got to know that. And the last thing I want to say before I move on to the next question, it's going to almost flow into it, is that, you know, as a leader, I'm a big believer that as the leader of my organization, I serve the people that work for me, in addition to obviously our clients or the people that we provide the stuff to, but the people that are in my office with me, I serve them. That's how I wake up in the morning. It's what can I do to make their life easier, because they're serving the company. And one of the things we provide, and I want the business owners out there to hear me, is I tell all of my employees multiple times a year, if there is any education or any opportunity for you to learn something that you need to do a better job, whether that's mentally, physically, trade skill, I don't care what it is. I want you to tell me that you need it. Tell me what it is. And as long as it makes sense, we will buy it for you. We will offer that to you. Right. And it's funny because, you know, I have one employee in particular I'm thinking of right now. He's constantly like, I want to learn this. I want to learn that. And I mean, we don't say yes to everything, obviously, but most of it we go yes. And man, he loves it. He's learning and he gets excited. And it's just education. Right. So, you know, that's something I don't see a lot of employers doing. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back with that. I'm just saying that, like, you know, we're giving him skills that he can use with us, or if he decides to move on, he can use someplace else, which is also important. It isn't a slave shop here, right? If someone's going to be happier someplace else, we're developing people. So, you know, the last thing I'll say too is you know, I always feel like I'm bragging when I say this, but I really shouldn't. One of the unique things about my companies that I realized about a few years in is that everyone we've ever hired has found us. I've never had to put an application out for work, because people find us or find me and they want to work for us. Right. And I didn't realize how unique that was until later on. And, you know, I started asking, like, what is it that, you know, I'm expecting, like, oh, it's just, I like your product. You have a great team. That's what they tell me. You got great people here. I want to be part of that team. Right. That should send a message out to people too. Because no matter whether you're working in a skyscraper or your basement, right? People want inherently to be part of a team. Introverts, extroverts, they want to be part of a team.
High-performing team, a successful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And success is, you know, we're doing that together, right? I'm a big we over me type person, right? So anyway, those are just some observations on the things that you said. Again, just going full circle, do not be afraid to ask for help. I know that can be hard. I know that can seem daunting. I've met people that have transitioned that have a very hard time swallowing pride with that. And I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. It's we all need help. Everyone needs
Yeah,
help.
hey, and Lee, let me jump in here because I want to
Please.
extend that not to just the transition from military to civilian life, but pivotal moments focuses on strengthening mental fitness,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And so I want to even broaden that statement to, look, we all have challenges, right? I mean, I don't care who you are, how successful you are. We all have challenges, and some of us just handle it better than others at times. But my point here is that if you're in a challenged time and you're struggling a little bit, it is not weakness to ask for help.
Right.
In fact, in my opinion, it's
Strength.
actually a sign of courage, and it's a sign of strength. Right now, many of us, at least in uniform, think that when we're challenged with whether it's mental health, whatever you want to call it, that we can't ask for help because people are going to think we're weak. And hey, look, I carried a top secret, a TS-SCI clearance for the better part of my 27 years in the military. And if I was having challenges, I did not ask for help because I was concerned that I might lose my clearance. And that would not only would that potentially end my military career, but it would certainly cut me out of assignments that I sought where that TS-SCI clearance was absolutely critical, right? And the fact of the matter is that if you're struggling, whether it's with the transition, you're struggling mentally, whatever it is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength, and I believe a sign of courage when you ask for help, or if you see someone who is in need of help, then you help them get whatever they need. So anyway, let's continue on, but I just want to broaden that statement a little bit beyond just the transition discussion.
It's totally fair.
Absolutely. One other small quote in one of the books, you told me, that I do a lot of reading. And one of the books is a very simple book, almost cartoon drawings, but it's phenomenal. But one of them, it actually says, asking for help is not giving up. And then it has a little hesitation and it says, think about it. It's the exact opposite.
It is. Yeah.
Right. So, that's what we want. We want people who are willing to just say, look, that's not going the direction I need to go. How do I get it back? Right. And the other quote is, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. So, when you come to people like me, I've had a lot of experience. I've had a lot of things that didn't go my way. So I can maybe tell you which direction not to go. And that's helpful too. So,
and one quote to add to that, Howie and I took a course. I really like this one, about using failure as a learning tool. And the teacher said, if you put your hand on the oven, don't leave it there. Get it off the oven. So you learn, you don't leave it there and live in the misery of your head burning. It hurt, but pick it up. You don't need to continue to do the same thing. Anyway, and I want to move on to Achievance, which you created in 2000. So tell the audience what motivated you to start this. You got into this a little bit earlier with entrepreneurship, but it's a consulting process. Tell us the steps, tell us the services you provided, and it's 21 years old now. So it's full maturity. It's legal. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Yeah, there was a gentleman, Ken Wolf, and we got to know each other. He had this company called Achievance, and it was a commercial focused organization. And we just kept talking. And I said, I just started this thing over at withFedSources. They're going through some growth issues. Some of their people are moving on to other places, and they're going to be bought. And so I might like to look at maybe going into something else. And he immediately said, we're in DC. I don't have a federal contracting practice. Let's put one together with us. And that's what we did. And again, concentrated on that growth. We concentrated on service transitions. We concentrated on organizational development, strategic management, strategic planning. And I spent a significant amount of time starting one element with an organization. I'll use, Howie's organization as an example. We came in there to help with organizational development. Next thing we know, we're working service transition. Next thing we know, we're on their strategic planning team. But that's what we brought to the table was this kind of experience. And I loved being able to form these teams of highly let's just say highly successful individuals. Tony Crescenzo being one was on our team. And now he's second time CEO, actually probably fourth time CEO.
Right. Right.
But what we really brought to the table was this ability to help in a number of places where people don't normally ask for help. We didn't do proposal, help. We did a little bit of it just because we were there, but a lot of people did that, and they were probably better at it than we were. A lot of people did capture management probably better than we did. Now, there were some things that I can probably find some talent here if you really want me to, but why don't you just go talk to these guys because they're really good at it. But we provided that help in areas where a lot of people really didn't plan their day, right? And so some of it was, again, listening. Some of it was growth from listening. Like, you said this, but where you're really having the problem is over here. Let me bring some expertise into that, and let's start working it. So that's where Achievance really started to build. It did kind of start in the growth area. How do you build embedded based growth, et cetera. But it really boiled down to, there's some areas that people just don't really want to talk about very much, right? How do you set up a career plan for somebody? That's hard, right? You've got all these divergent roads that you could take. Well, how do you lay one out so somebody can understand it? Those are the kind of things that we jumped into. And now that I was a COO, kind of took a 6.5 year hiatus from Achievance. Now I'm back. I'm back doing certain things. I'm a lot of executive coaching. You want to be in a lonely position? You're in one, right? Who helps you? Right? Who helps Lee? He's the boss. Who helps him? Right? Who does he have to turn to? Sometimes you got your father as a mentor, or a different business executive as a mentor, but a lot of times it's hard. It's hard. As Tony always says, it's lonely at the top, right? Because when you say, I need help, people go, oh my gosh, something's wrong. CEO needs help. Well, CEOs need help too.
It's not untrue, yeah.
We've been working a lot of executive coaching just for that reason. As a matter of fact, there's a chance that, in the future, we're going to actually, with Tony, and Tony will probably cover this, he wants to do it, is probably cover some sort of a CEO academy of sorts.
Wow, interesting.
How do you help people at the top really get the help that they need to move things forward?
And I do want to.
It's only in a very short stage now, but these are the kind of things that we think about all the time.
No, I just want to affirm and confirm what you're saying. At the very top, or as an organizational leader, it is very lonely. Because again, I think if you're doing it right, like I don't want my employees to know my grievances, not with the job, but like as a leader, right? You can't express that to the people that you're serving, right? That's just not going to come across the right way. And it's just from a management standpoint, not healthy. I should put it that way. And at the same time, you look around and there's really no one exactly around you. And I love this statement about leadership is everybody expects you to lead till you make a decision that they don't like.
Right.
And those are, when you make a great leadership decision, everybody loves it. Those days are easy. But when you have to make a decision that's hard, and you're alone to make that decision. And, I've always respected leaders that understand, they have to live with that decision. And I think that that's something that it's not, I don't want to say it's underappreciated by people underneath in terms of a hierarchy of a system. I think it's more unknown, right? How hard it is to make certain decisions sometimes. And again, I'm not complaining right now. That's the job, but you're absolutely right of, who do I share that with? My wife, my father, my mother, maybe, but who do I share that with? That's also a CEO that has to make hard decisions. Kind of accidentally merging these two things together. I've had to tell leaders before, hey, you're not alone. You are not alone. You might feel lonely, but you're not alone.
Right.
All right.
Right.
I had to have a phone call with a leader the other day who was very, very upset. I said, you're not alone. I've been where you're at. I want you to know you're not by yourself with this. Right. So I had to affirm that because people hear that, oh, it's lonely at the top. It's true. It's very true. Try being a head coach of a hockey team, man. Jeez. I'll tell you that one. Yeah. Again, when you win, it's the player's fault. When you lose, it's the coach's fault.
That's right.
Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure.
The Caps won the Stanley Cup and they still got rid of their coach.
I know. And now he's driving another team towards the Stanley Cup.
No
which is
kidding.
Hilarious.
They're looking good.
Yeah. So yeah, we were talking about Achievance. I think that's a great explanation. Now I want speaking of sports, I want to transition here.
Okay.
We know you're super motivated as a teacher, as a coach, as a mentor. He spoke about all of those, and you've got a lengthy coach of coaching men and women in softball and baseball. So we got to get into that, right?
Sure.
Tell us how you started as a coach. Share some of your experiences and how you shape, influence, motivate, and develop young athletes, because that's a calling in itself.
Yeah, it's probably some of the most rewarding work you can possibly do. It can be frustrating too, as you all both know. But the truth is, I it's kind of funny. I played all the way through, the Naval Academy. Got invited to some, invitations to some national or regional teams in baseball, and I can tell you that when I look back on it, I didn't have all the most positive coaches, right? I
Right.
had some guys that were the old school, I see your legs broken. Well, put it back in place and run to third,
Some dirt on it.
and yeah, spit on it, and,
Yeah.
and I can appreciate that to an extent, but but I didn't have those guys that connected, and so I'll give you my, I went to the Naval Academy, got to coach, saw a whole different side of my coach as an assistant coach, right? As I did when I was a player. And I got to see, a whole different the way he thinks about things and why he made some of the decisions he made, right or wrong. But again, at the top, you're making the decisions. So, the
Right.
team's gonna win or suffer with with the consequences. But I got to see how that all kind of worked. So my two coaches at the Naval Academy, an example, were George Welsh in football, College Football Hall of Fame, right? And Joe Duff, 36 years as a baseball coach in the Naval Academy, who had every friend in the major leagues you could possibly want because he'd been around for so long. And so this guy, he just knew the game front and back. People skills, I'd give him a B minus on those maybe. And some guys would do a little worse. But but again, I got to see a whole different person when we were coaching together, and that made me realize that this is something I really want to do. Unfortunately, back then, baseball was not paying the $1 million and $3 million salaries that they're paying today to coach NCAA level. Um, and so my one offer that I got after leaving the academy was
Damn, I missed my calling, man.
to go be a resident assistant with my family in a small dorm at Tufts University or whatever. But it wasn't going to work out. So I went into the business side. But during business, I continued to coach. I coached Little League. I coached American Legion baseball. I coached just about every level you could, especially in baseball. But there was a real catalyst for the high school coaching. Um, I was in the shadows of the trade towers on 9/11. I was at the American Stock Exchange, and we were doing interviews, and literally, all five senses were alerted. You felt, you heard, you smelled, all of that stuff. And so when I say in the shadows, I mean that the aftermath of the collisions were coming down on our building. That's how close we were. So immediately, we went to survival mode and we wanted to get home. It was me and another partner of ours at Achievance. And we finally got on that second train that left to go back to DC. There's a whole lot of coincidences in there, as everybody knows. But as we're going back, you got to look back at the smoke going back over the Atlantic Ocean. And at the time, we were told that there could be 5,000 casualties. And the first thing that ran through my mind was there's 5,000 people who left for work this morning that may not have ever done what they really wanted to do. And I made up my mind. I said, well, I'm in a consulting business where I control most of my hours. I need to go back to coaching. It's what I love. It's what I think I had a calling for. It's what I might even have been put on here to do. So I got to go do it. So that year I went back and immediately started talking to high school coaches. And then I helped out here, helped out there. And finally, one of the guys called me and said, I got a softball position open. You willing to do it? Yes. He goes, well, we have a pretty good team. I know, but we're going to get better. And I put my strategy together. I mean, I did all the things that a college coach does, right? Laid out my plans, my practice plans, my inspirational talks. I had it all laid out for the team. And when I got there, they just looked at me like, we just want to play ball. Just don't get in our way, coach. We just want to play ball. Well, a bunch of very humorous anecdotes later, right? We came to the conclusion that I may know an awful lot about softball, but they knew an awful lot more about how to inspire them than I did. I thought I knew. No, I didn't. I didn't know all of the things that make a difference between an all male team and an all female team. Huge differences. I came to the conclusion that, in all honesty, these women were more competitive than all the guys I coached. I came to the conclusion that they needed to have fun in order to play well, right? I came to the conclusion that I don't need to be ranting and raving all the time. I need to call them up if they don't do things right. They expect that. But I don't need to be ranting and raving because you know what? They're going to show up ready to go. And we had some extremely competitive teams. And one of the best questions I was ever asked, we had a Division I level pitcher. She was actually the coach at Syracuse. She ended up going somewhere else, but she was the coach of Syracuse at the time. And she called me up and said, "We really want your pitcher. This is Division I. This is ACC. This is big time ball." And I said, "Okay, well, what can I answer for you?" And she was, "Well, I know she can pitch. I've seen her pitch in the summer leagues. I know she can pitch. You need to answer one question for me. Can she make the transition from the classroom to the field?" And I told her, I said, "Coach, I have never coached anybody who can leave the classroom behind as quickly as this one can." And she said, "Fine, I'm calling her tonight." Called her that night and offered her scholarship. And it wasn't my answer. I mean, how I answered necessarily, it was the answer. Because so many times it's so hard for the young kids to transition from what just happened at school, their boyfriend, their girlfriends, their teachers, their classwork, their family, whatever. This woman could walk onto the field and it was all forgotten and it was business. Now, she would mimic me in the dugout all the time. Whenever I was giving signs, she'd be in there cracking everybody up. But as soon as she stepped back onto that field, it was all business. And I learned a lot from that, is that, yes, they need to have a little bit of fun, but when they step on the field, these girls are ready to go. And
Right.
so that coaching really helped. As a result of that coaching, I was asked to help with the football team. Middle linebacker, help the middle linebackers out. Ended up doing that for 14 years. And the last 4 years of my coaching in high school football was what they call the character coach. It was FCA, right, Fellowship of Christian Athletes element, but it was also character building. It was Thursday team dinners, giving that speech that said why it's important to be a team, right? It was, what courage really looks like, bringing in guest speakers that could define things for these kids. And it became huge. It came to the point where people were coming in just to see these things. And that's when, again, to go back to your point, Howie, that's when people should realize they're not getting access to this. It's sad. They're not getting access to what leadership is supposed to look like and how it's supposed to feel and how you're supposed to feel when you're behind a good leader, right? And so we would really start emphasizing those things in the last 4 years. Because I was the COO, I wasn't able to get out at 4:00 every afternoon. So, I had to come up with another thing, and that was what we came up with. And we spent a lot of time doing that. But coaching to me is one of the most rewarding things you can possibly do. And like you guys have experienced, it can be frustrating as heck. I will tell you a story that I know you guys can deal with. I had a young man on a baseball team who came up to me and said, "Coach, I've made up my mind. I'm going to go to Arizona State University and I'm going to play baseball there." And I said, "Pick one." And he kind of looked at me. And I said, "Pick one of those two, because you're not going to play baseball for the Arizona State baseball team." I said, "Because there's nothing worse than a third round draft pick on that team." I said, "So let's set our sights a little bit better." Well, no more than an hour later, I'm out washing my car, and here comes the dad. The dad steps out of his car and said, "How dare you dash the dreams of my son?" And I said, "Sir, somebody had to." And to me, that's leadership. Somebody had to. I'm not saying I'm dashing his dreams. I'm telling him what he should be looking for right now. He ended up coming back down to earth, ended up playing 4 years at a Division II school that got to play Division I teams, and realized that this was a good place for me to be, right? And that one worked out. There's been some, obviously, that, I still had people mad at me, but I felt that was my job. I have to be transparent and accountable, right? I'm not going to sit here and say your son should go to Arizona State unless I really felt their son should go to Arizona State and play baseball. And by the way, I said I would have been contacted if Arizona State was interested. So, but again, you have to have some of these hard conversations. And so, but that's what leadership and that's what coaching is all about. You have to be able to pull those things together. Right now, I'm coaching a 10U girls softball team, and I got to tell you, that's a totally different place. Um, they are amazing, but you talk about having to have fun before they play well. I mean, in between games, these girls are out running around, playing volleyball, kicking balls around, knocking people down, just enjoying themselves. And then, boom, flip the switch, go play softball. It's like, whereas boys would be in the cage. We gotta get better. We gotta do that.
Right.
Girls are like, I got this. I gotta have fun before I can play, coach. We gotta have some fun. And when it comes to dinner, they have to be together for dinner.
Right.
You can't. Well, parents want to go here and this. No, everybody has to be together for dinner. They're driving that, not us. So it is totally different. But I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. It's an amazing feeling.
Ed, you're actually reminding me of something that I think is another important point to bring out. When I was fortunate enough, actually, towards the end of my military career, that I was in positions where I had a little bit of flexibility with my time. So as my kids started to play sports, I could actually be there and watch them or even help coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I actually transitioned out of uniform into the Morgan Franklin Corporation, what became very clear to me was how much I actually controlled my own time. And Rob made it very clear to me, right? Rob Franklin, a co-owner of the company, says, "Hey, look, you live, driving in the DC area could take you 20 minutes to get someplace. It could take you 2 hours to get to the same place, depending on traffic or an accident, whatever." Is to say, look, I don't care whether you're here every day or not. I care that you get the things done that you need to get done. So if you want to work from home, you can work from home. If you want to leave early, you can leave early, right? The point being is I now had a lot more ownership of my time, which now made me available to go watch my kids play sports, to actually coach some of my kids' teams as an assistant coach, never as the head coach.
I understand.
And my point here is for the men and women who are transitioning, that's something that you're going to enjoy in that transition. Is now you may find that you actually have a lot more time to do some of the things that you wanted to do but couldn't do in uniform. And I hope you'll take advantage of that, especially if you have young children. And look, whether it's sports, they play in the band, a jazz club, whatever it is, right? But that I hope you'll take advantage of that as well, and take the time to spend that time with your children and your entire family, right? So Ed, let me get to the last thing here, and I do really appreciate your spending the time with us. But as we talked about before, Pivotal Moments focuses on strengthening mental fitness worldwide. And so what we would love for you to do is just kind of define for us what mental fitness means for you, and what are things that you personally do to strengthen your own mental fitness.
I appreciate that question, because just the other day I was with the girls and somebody said, I'd made a statement, "Girls, you're 10 and 11 years old and you're making me pick up all these balls out here in the infield." And they said, "Well, how old are you, coach?" When I told them, they went, well, you're an active 67-year-old. So I said, okay, I'll accept that. But when I think about mental fitness, first of all, being on the boards really helps. So I'm staying connected, and I'll talk about that in a second. But a couple of the things that I firmly believe is you have to have a purpose, right? People that lose their way, and I've spoken with many of them, they seem to have lost their purpose. They don't really know why they're there. And I like to make sure that I have a purpose. And I go back to the Admiral, his name just escaped me, but he gave that wonderful talk at the University of Texas.
McRaven, Admiral McRaven.
When he said, make your bed in the morning, right? First thing I do every morning is I make my bed. He has a purpose. It may be a 20-minute purpose, but it's a purpose. And you get up with that purpose in mind. And no matter what that purpose is, I always try to tell anybody who's feeling despondent. And once again, a friend of mine that I've been coaching just lost a friend. It's a suicide. And he told me the same thing. He felt he didn't have a reason. And so I always talk about that purpose. And if you don't have one, find one and get somebody to help you find one, right? I use the service dogs as an example. I have some friends that through PTSD or other elements that are bothering them, they were given service dogs. And most people look at a service dog and say, "Wow, that's a great thing. That dog is really helping that person." The truth of the matter is, the purpose is that person is helping that dog. That dog is completely reliant on you. You're the one who has to feed him. You're the one who has to take him out. You're the one who has to get him exercise. You're the one that has to make.
I
You're the
hadn't
one that
thought
has
of
to
it
make
that way.
his home a home. So they get a purpose, and that means that every morning they might complain and bitch and moan about it, but they're so happy to let that dog out. They're so happy to feed that dog, give that dog water, because they now have a purpose in life.
Absolutely.
And when I watched, it was a show on Netflix or one of them, and I watched it, and it was so true. There was another one about surfing. A person looked at the surf coach, a veteran, looked at the surf coach and said, "I'll see you tomorrow." And the coach started crying because he said he's got something to look forward to. He's coming back tomorrow, right? And that, to me, that purpose is what is so strong in mental fitness. Another thing is you have to have some sort of consistency in your life, right? I don't want to call it a routine or a plan because that's kind of too formal, but a consistency. There are certain things I'm going to do every day, right? I'm going to read. I'm going to coach. I'm going to help somebody if I can. I'm going to, do something around the house. But there's a consistency in my day, and it gives me something to look forward to. And the third thing is creativity, right? I firmly believe that mental fitness requires creativity of some sort. People go to painting. I personally play the piano, probably something you didn't know. But I'm not saying I can play Rachmaninoff, but I write my own stuff, right? And because it's good for me, it helps
Very
me.
cool.
It allows me to just be creative and work through some elements, right? Um, and one of the other things is some things that I do, and it's the same thing a lot of people do, right? There's crossword puzzles, there's Sudoku, there's cryptograms, there's all kinds of things, but I don't use it for that. I use it for focus, right? It allows me to focus on something for a short amount of time. I don't have to do it all day. I'm not going to do crossword puzzles till my hands fall off. I'm not going to play chess against the computer master. They're going to kill me. But I am going to do something that allows me to focus on something for short terms. And those things have really helped me. And last but not least, and we've talked about this, is reading. I'm probably on my 20th book this year.
Oh,
And
wow.
some of,
Cool.
some of it is organizational and professional. A lot of it is just fun. But the truth is, I decided I'm going to start reading some classics, right? I just read Robinson Crusoe. I had no idea it was written in the 1700s, right? But these are the kind of things that allow me to just continue to learn. So I focus, I learn, I read, and I try to keep that purpose in mind at all times. So those are some of the things that I think help me, and I hope it would help others.
That's awesome, Ed. Listen, I know Lee's going to close out here in a minute, but I just want to say personally, thank you for taking the time to be with us. I was so looking forward to this to recording this episode to connect with you again. It is great to see you. It's great to talk with you. It reminds me of the sessions, the weekly sessions we had, which I actually looked forward to every week.
Yeah,
I
me too.
really did.
Me
And
too.
and listen, as I told you the other day on the phone, I know periodically you'll be up in this area, and I hope you'll let me know, because I will move things around on my calendar to be able to link up with you, whether it's lunch, dinner, a beer, smoke a cigar. I don't care what it is, man. I just want to hopefully get some time with you and Tony, and I'm sure it'll be a blast. But thanks again for being with us today, and thanks for the incredibly valuable content, advice, guidance, direction, mentoring you're providing to the folks who, if they choose to listen to this, will derive tremendous value from it. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I hope I didn't disappoint.
No, you were spectacular as always, man.
You didn't disappoint, and I'll tell you what. As Howie knows this habit on this show is I give every guest a book name that if they ever wrote a book, They could have a name for the book. And I'll be honest with you, Ed, most of them are pretty cheeky and funny. Yours is not. The name of your book is just Honorable by Ed Abner. That's the way I would name your book. Start and finish with the same thing you said. I probably could have came up with something funny, but I didn't want to because that describes this podcast. But thanks so much for being here. And obviously, you've been listening to Life After the Military, which is powered by the nonprofit Pivotal Moments. You can learn more about that organization at pivotalmoments.org. We got lots of inspirational content. You can get education. You can donate, whatever suits you the best. For Ed Abner, Howie Cohen, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us, and make sure you keep an eye out for more episodes soon, wherever podcasts can be heard. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on Transitioning from the Military, Life After the Military. I almost forgot the name of my own show. Have a great day, everybody.